The Richard Roeper Show is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios. The digital landscape is changing rapidly, and to compete in today's online business environment, you need that experienced partner. Since 1995, AmericanEagle.com has partnered with companies of all sizes, offering web design, web development, e-commerce, mobile apps, and digital marketing to drive your overall business's success, because they believe that today's online world is your online opportunity. Visit AmericanEagle.com to get started today. AmericanEagle.com. That's AmericanEagle.com. So here we are, well into April, and I want to talk a little bit about the movies that were coming out 25 years ago in the spring of 2000. In the year 2000, used to sound very futuristic. Remember 2001, A Space Odyssey, set in the very far future when it came out. And 25 years ago, listen, we all end up saying this as we get older, but I'm like, Jesus, that seems like it was yesterday. So, if you're 40, these are a lot of the movies that you probably remember from when you were, in high school, right around that age. And when we talk about the greatest years for movies, a lot of people talk about 1939 and 1994. And I'm not saying 2000 was in that category, but it's pretty amazing to look back and realize that at one point in April, probably all of these movies were in theaters. Some of them came out in March, but they, movies played a lot longer back in 2000. That's you could rent videos then, and we had some cable. Obviously, we had premium cable channels such as HBO and Showtime, and a lot of we were starting to get more basic cable series and reality shows and stuff. But the movies were still a more dominant entertainment form, and the movies would play sometimes. In fact, I was looking at Box Office Mojo, the invaluable aggregate site where they keep track of all the box office, domestic, international, adjusted for inflation, week to week, going all the way back, I think to the 80s, something like that. And you just look and you go, wow, some of the movies that were playing in 2000 had come out in 1999. American Beauty, I think, probably because of an Oscar push. A lot of times they would re-release films in theaters if they were nominated for lots of Oscars, or if they won. You'd say, hey, this is your chance to see it, because it still wasn't going to come out on TV for a while. So I want to start off with a couple of movies that were released in March of 2000, but were still playing in April of 2000. And again, that's a 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's like 25 years, right? Something like that. Yeah. Okay. The math. So Erin Brockovich was actually released on March 17th. Steven Soderbergh, of course, the director, Julia Roberts winning the Academy Award, Albert Finney and Aaron Eckhart in incredible supporting performances. This was based on the real life Erin Brockovich, who worked with Finney's character Ed Mastery to go after the Pacific Gas and Electric Company regarding the Hinkley groundwater contamination incident. And, this is one of those films. Soderbergh is so brilliant. We've just talked about a few films he's done recently, smaller, intimate, character-driven films. But then he does the Ocean's movies, or he does an Erin Brockovich, which is a really well done, but it's got that big Hollywood underdog approach to it, which works perfectly, because that's how it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day too. I've interviewed both Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich, the real Erin Brockovich, who's a hoot, who's great, who's interesting, and continues to do all this fantastic work. So the picture itself, though, really, really, really entertaining. And there's, the couple of scenes in Erin Brockovich where Julia has these great speeches, and you're just going like, okay, we're getting an Academy Award nomination and actually a win. We know it, right? Let's listen to a little bit of Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich.
Erin, you don't even have phone numbers for some of them.
Whose number do you need?
Everyone's. This is a lawsuit. We need to be able to contact the plaintiffs.
I said, whose number do you need?
You don't know 600 plaintiffs' numbers by heart. Annabelle Daniels.
Annabelle Daniels, 714-454-9346. 10 years old, 11 in May, lived on the plume since birth. Wanted to be a synchronized swimmer, so she spent every minute she could in the PG&E pool. She had a tumor in her brainstem detected last November. An operation on Thanksgiving shrunk it with radiation after that. Her parents are Ted and Rita. Ted's got Crohn's disease. Rita has chronic headaches and nausea and underwent a hysterectomy last fall. Ted grew up in Hinkley. His brother Robbie and his wife May and their 5 children, Robbie Jr., Martha, Ed, Rose, and Peter, also lived on the plume. Their number is 454-9554. You want their diseases?
Okay, look, I think we got off on the wrong foot here.
That's all you got, lady. 2 wrong feet in fucking ugly shoes.
Terrific, entertaining film. Final Destination came out the same day as Erin Brockovich. Very different movie. Now, of course, the Final Destination series. They keep doing them, right? And there's been movies, comic books. All started with a spec script written by Jeffrey Riddick. That was going to be a TV episode, I think, a TV show. But then it turned into this film. And the setup of the Final Destination movies. There's a group of people who escape death. And then they get killed off in one creative manner after another. No matter how hard they try, you could lock yourself in a padded room with no sharp objects, and there's going to be an earthquake. So in the original, remember the kids were going to the senior trip to Paris, and one of the kids has a premonition of a mechanical failure, and there's a big dust up, and they get kicked off the plane. They remove a bunch of the high school students get kicked off the plane, and then the plane explodes, and now the survivors get picked off one by one. Really good cast. Never forget that Allie Larder's character is Clear Rivers, is her name. Clear Rivers, Final Destination. The movies, I mean, they're kind of just disposable and ridiculous, but they've come up with some really creative ways to kill people through the years. March 31st, again, these movies that we're talking about now were released in March, but came out and we're still playing at theaters in April. High Fidelity, terrific film from Stephen Frears with John Cusack and Jack Black. It was based on the 1995 British novel of the same name by Nick Hornby. They moved the setting from London to Chicago, but it's basically the same thing. Rob Gordon is this music guy. He's got a music store. And in Chicago, they called it Championship Vinyl. And then they do all these top 5 lists. And they did it in the book as well. And he goes back through his previous relationships and tries to figure out where he screwed up. And Cusack is great in this because he's playing a guy who's really smart and passionate and edgy, but kind of a jerk, but comes to realize that he doesn't have to be a jerk, especially with women. Nick Hornby, his novels have been turned into. They actually did he did a book called Fever Pitch, which I believe was originally about a soccer fan, a football fan, and they had a British adaptation with Colin Firth, and then they did the 2005 version. They made him a Red Sox fan, Jimmy Fallon, right, and Drew Barrymore, and they had the serendipitous, I think might be the word, timing that So it's a story about a guy who loves a woman but worships his favorite team, and can he reconcile the two? Super fan. Jimmy Fallon's actually really good, and Drew Barrymore as well. But that was the year they filmed it in 2004. That's the year the Red Sox won the World Series, right? They came back against the Yankees from 3 games to zip, I think, in the league championship, and then went on to win the World Series. So they had all this real life footage. It's fantastic. I like both of those films, and also About a Boy, another Nick Hornby book that was turned into a terrific film with Hugh Grant and Nicholas Hoult, and then a not so terrific TV series. Okay, movies that came out in April. It's an incredible roster, really. Such a different, very diverse batch of films. Black and White, which is from James Toback, who wrote maybe the best gambling movie of all time, the original The Gambler with James Caan. Also wrote Bugsy, and also got into some hot water because of alleged behavior for decades, apparently. Not good stuff. The LA Times at one point reporting about him, with dozens of women accusing him of sexual harassment. To the film itself, it's kind of uneven. It's this mix of, it's a lot about white kids getting into black culture, and there's crime in this, and weird romances, and an incredible cast. Robert Downey Jr., Gabby Hoffman, Jared Leto, Brooke Shields, Bijou Phillips, Ben Stiller, Mike Tyson as himself. It's an uneven film, but very interesting and very much of its time, called Black and White. Another film that came out in April of 2000 is Return to Me. I kind of have a soft spot in my heart for this one for a number of reasons. Filmed here in Chicago, where I am. Directed by the wonderful Bonnie Hunt. Starring David Duchovny, Minnie Driver, and also Carol O'Connor. I think that was his last role. So it's kind of a nutty, weird and wacky plot. There's a couple that lives in Chicago. Bob, that's the Duchovny character, and his wife is an architect, and his wife is a zoologist at the Lincoln Park Zoo, a real life zoo here in Chicago, in Lincoln Park, actually. And there's a fundraiser for a new primate house, and Elizabeth gets killed in a car accident, and she leaves, her heart is transplanted to one Grace Briggs, who had suffered from heart disease since the age of 14. And that's who Minnie Driver plays. So now Minnie Driver's character of Grace has dead Elizabeth's heart. And then she meets Bob, but they don't know this about each other. I mean, she doesn't know that it was his wife who gave her the heart. He doesn't know that she's the recipient. And eventually the truth is going to come out and leads to the immortal line where someone says, Grace has Bob's dead wife's heart. The only time you're ever going to hear that in a movie. I love they filmed a lot of this at Lincoln Park Zoo. I know some in the suburbs, but also a key place was Twin Anchors in Old Town, a famous joint in Old Town that's been around there forever. Which is also Twin Acres is the bar where Harvey Dent, who has become Two-Face in The Dark Knight, confronts the corrupt detective played by the great Ron Dean, who also, of course, was one of the cops who arrested Dr. Richard Kimball in The Fugitive. So you get to see Twin Anchors. Return to Me, very sweet movie. Also in April of 2000, Rules of Engagement came out. Again, not the greatest film, but it's kind of good, pulpy entertainment. This is directed by William Friedkin, whose much better work would include The Exorcist and The French Connection and To Live and Die in L.A. But it's kind of interesting. See, Sam Jackson plays a U.S. Marine colonel who's brought to court-martial for ordering Marines to kill civilians. Tommy Lee Jones, Guy Pearce, Bruce Greenwood, who's always in these types of movies, right? Blair Underwood, Philip Baker Hall, terrific cast. Not the greatest film, but good one to check out if you haven't seen it. We also had 28 Days came out in April of 2000. That's Sandra Bullock playing a newspaper columnist who has to enter a rehab center for alcoholism. Viggo Mortensen's in there. He's a baseball player. Viggo Mortensen, professional baseball player, is in rehab. And then Dominic West, who's such a good actor. He was one of the Charleses in The Crown, right? And he's the no good Jasper. He's Jasper. That's not a term I'm using to describe him. That's his name, Jasper. He's the no good boyfriend that keeps trying to get Sandra Bullock's character to keep partying, even though she's trying to get it together. Elizabeth Perkins plays Sandra Bullock's sister, and I think Steve Buscemi is a counselor in that film. So very serious. It has some comedy, but it's also, I think, an accurate and respectful look at rehabilitation and alcoholism in rehab centers. Another movie this is all playing in theaters, guys, in April of 2000. American Psycho, the cult hit satirical horror film.
New card. What do you think?
Whoa, very nice. Look at that.
Picked them up from the printers yesterday.
Good coloring.
That's bone. And the lettering is something called Cillian Braille.
It's very cool, Bateman, but that's nothing. Look at this. That is really nice. Eggshell with Romalian type. What do you think?
Nice.
Jesus. That is really super. How'd a nitwit like you get so tasteful?
I can't believe that Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine.
But wait. You ain't seen nothing yet. Raised lettering. Pale nimbus. White.
Impressive. Very nice. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Look at that subtle off-white coloring. The tasteful thickness of it. Oh my God. It even has a watermark. Something wrong, Patrick?
Bret Easton Ellis, who of course wrote Less Than Zero, which became, I think, a really good film. And American Psycho, it's so strange because Christian Bale as Patrick Bateman is so stiff, but he's playing a character who's socially inept, who's obsessed with his looks and his clothing and music and getting into all the best clubs and restaurants. It's very much a 2000 film. And as you know, if you've read the book or seen the movie, Patrick Bateman is a psycho serial killer who's murdering people. Or is he? Is it all in his mind? Justin Theroux, Josh Lucas, Reese Witherspoon, terrific cast. And now they're doing a new, they're not just remaking it. They're doing a different take. There were some differences between the book and the movie. And Austin Butler is going to play Patrick Bateman. I think that's, Austin Butler or anything's going to be good, right? Still in the year 2000, guys. Love and Basketball. Another film that's really, I think, picked up respect and deservedly so and adoration and admiration over the years. That's with Sanaa Lathan and Omar Epps. They're next door neighbors and they're each pursuing basketball careers. And the fascinating thing there is this 25 years ago. So the women's basketball, it was still a thing and quite a thing, but nowhere near what it is now, sort of just really taking off. And they're both very good in this. And the story's divided into 4 quarters. I like that. Just like a basketball game. Frequency came out in the year 2000. That's This is one of those movies that makes no sense, but kind of works. So Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel. So Jim Caviezel gets on like a ham radio, and he's talking to somebody that he realizes is his dead father, who wasn't dead. He's a firefighter who was killed in a fire, played by Dennis Quaid, and they work together through some, I don't know, the Aurora Borealis comes or some shit, some way they can communicate with each other. But they realize, as you always do in these types of movies, if you start messing with the timeline, sometimes things can go even worse. And there's a whole plot involving a serial killer. It's really trippy, really good performances from both of those lead actors. I liked Frequency though. So all of these movies came out in April, and then you're thinking, well, they probably didn't have much coming out in May. May 1st, Gladiator hits theaters, my friends. May 1st of 2000.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Went on to win 5 Academy Awards. So just imagine. And listen, we got a lot of movies playing in theaters right now, but what a group of films, from the mildly interesting to the great to the hit and miss, but really, and so many of these that we just mentioned there, of course, guess what? Original films with original screenplays based on cool books, biopics, horror franchises. But you notice I didn't mention this 2, that 3, that son of, not that they weren't doing sequels back then, but a pretty cool time for movies, the year 2000. Let's take a break and talk about Portillo's, and then I got a couple of really interesting TV streaming series I want to tell you guys about. All right, let's talk a little bit about Portillo's. They're known, of course, for their famous Chicago hot dogs with all the freshest and tastiest ingredients, right down to that famous poppy seed bun. Then we have to talk about the legendary chocolate cake. And everybody knows if you've ever been to Portillo's, but if you don't, you never put the cake in the fridge. You have to have it at room temperature. That's how it's delivered to you or handed to you in the restaurant. That's the way you have to taste it. And of course, the menu has everything from the charbroiled burger to Italian beef to some really good chopped salads. But oh, that chocolate cake, I'm telling you. Now, there are locations throughout the Midwest and in Florida, California, and Arizona. But you can also ship Portillo's anywhere in the United States of America by ordering at portillos.com. That's PORTILLOS.com. PORTILLOS.com.
My cancer's back. I'm too young. I haven't done anything with my life.
I know it's cheesy, but everybody has a bucket list.
I've never even had an orgasm with another person.
Good. We have something for your list. Orgasm with another person.
I joined a dating app.
You're immunocompromised. You can't just sleep with strangers.
This is about how I feel, and I want to feel things. I want to feel everything for as long as I can.
Touch me. Please.
I'm so sorry. He's being very bad.
Okay, that's a clip from a Hulu series called Dying for Sex. Dying for Sex. So the backstory of this is fascinating. We talk about how there's so many podcasts out there. I can think of one right now. But a lot of these podcasts that are, have a unique spot, whether it's an investigation of a cold case or a new examination of relationships, they get adapted into series these days. And there's a rich field of potential films and TV shows that come from podcasts. So in the year 2020, Nikki Boyer hosted a podcast in which she chatted with her best friend, Molly, who, after being diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, had decided to leave her husband and explore her sexual desires for the first time in her life. That's a true life story. Unfortunately, Molly has passed away. But there's kind of a great tribute to her in this new series that's inspired by the podcast, Dying for Sex. So Michelle Williams plays Molly. Jenny Slate plays best friend Nikki. They're unbelievably good together. And yes, it's about a woman who, in the opening episode, finds out that her cancer has returned and that there's really not much the doctors can do. And she has 5 years at best. and she's young and she feels like she hasn't done that much with her life. And she's with a very supportive husband who also doesn't want to touch her because he feels like that he shouldn't do that because she's sick. And she decides that she's going to leave her husband and explore her sexuality. And it leads to some really funny episodes, some very touching episodes, a lot of them combining the both. Michelle Williams has an Emmy and will get nominated again. And Jenny Slate is so good as the best friend. Jenny Slate is so funny. And she's played a lot of characters who are quirky and quick and, a little bit off. But she could do heavy drama as well. And her portrayal here of the best friend is so beautifully done and maybe the best work of her career. Sissy Spacek shows up as Molly's mother for a couple of episodes. It's called Dying for Sex, and the last episode of this series is one of the single best episodes of television I've seen this decade. Dying for Sex on Hulu is a must watch. I know you're thinking, geez, that sounds heavy, and it can be, but it's actually as much about the comedy and about the friendships and about this crazy world that we find ourselves in and sometimes take for granted than about a woman who's dying. I also, man, if you're a parent, especially if parent of youngsters, of young children, I really hope you watch Bad Influence, The Dark Side of Kidfluencing on Netflix. This is a documentary series about all these kids who become, not all these kids, but there are many kids who they start doing YouTube or TikTok or whatever videos when they're very, very young. Obviously, their parents, one or both parents or guardians are filming and encouraging them. And every once in a blue moon, one of them takes off like crazy. And Bad Influence on Netflix concentrates on, and I have to tell you, I knew just a little bit about this because I'm not the target audience, although one of the shocking and nauseating things is we find out that for a lot of these children, pre-adolescent, adolescent girls in particular, that a huge percentage of the viewers and subscribers are adult men.
It's Piper, go! Piper Raquel is an incredibly popular child influencer.
This young lady's amassed more than 10 million followers on YouTube.
Piper's mother, Tiffany Smith, is the momager.
She took these kids to massive viral fame. It seemed so innocent, but it wasn't innocent at all.
I didn't hear the way she spoke to me.
People should be asking themselves, is it really okay for my child's vulnerabilities to be displayed to random strangers?
Pull yourself together!
It doesn't matter what happened to us as long as they got it on camera. I remember being so scared.
It's really, really horrific when you see the stats. So this is the story of Piper Raquel, who became this one person and then part of a team when she was very, very young. She had done the beauty pageant thing, and her mother, Tiffany, was her, what do they call them? Momager, the stage manager mom, the classic thing. The father had left, and Tiffany, the single mother, had decided that this is what she was going to do. She was going to turn her daughter, Piper, into a viral star. And she became a huge, huge success. Piper Raquel, billions of views, made millions of dollars. So the series takes us through the whole run-up of this phenomenon and reminds us that, before YouTube, that YouTube is really where a lot of this exploded. And so in the 2010s, Piper and her mother actually moved to Los Angeles because her videos are taken off. They get this guy to play her brother on YouTube, like a teenager, Hunter, who's not really her brother. But so a lot of the stuff is just, the reality and little recipes and dancing and stuff. And a lot of it is very, very manufactured and scripted with Tiffany pulling all the strings. And then they had the squad, which was a bunch of these kids, all, by that point, maybe 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And they're monetizing the content and they're churning out reams of content in this huge house in LA with Tiffany in control of everything. And then there's this weird thing where they rescue cats. So there's dozens of cats in the house. And then they get into stuff. This Tiffany, the mom, gets increasingly ambitious. And according to a lot of the people who, other moms and former members of the squad, abusive, allegedly. They're working 12 hours a day, these kids. They're not going to school in most cases. Some are. And it's a lot. And they're starting to do stuff like the mean meter, where they do mean things to each other. And then this is the stuff that really just took me, took me aback, and I'm sure a lot of you know about this, but where they have what they call crush content, where they manifest a relationship, manufacture a relationship between young people. I'm talking about like 12, 13, 14 years old. And Piper's talking about her first kiss, and all of this is being broadcast, streamed on YouTube and other platforms. And it's really disturbing to see the way these kids, and they are kids, when we're talking about 13, 14, 15, teenagers, they're kids. And it's a mess. The whole thing, it turns sideways, and the squad breaks up, and then there's a lot of revenge and unsubscribing and all this kind of drama. You got to check this thing out. You may know a lot about this, I know it's a constant struggle for parents with young children. And this is again going back to 2 decades now, but especially in the last decade. You want your kids to have friends and do fun things. They want to do these videos. They want to watch them. And during COVID, that's all a lot of kids were doing, was either producing this stuff or consuming it. But man, it goes back to, I don't know why anybody would want their kid to be an actor or a singer when they're just a kid. They want to do that when they're 18. Go for it. And we see a lot of kids who do just fine, and they're well-adjusted, and God bless them. And we see a lot of horror stories as well. But this thing is even, I think, this whole kidfluencing thing, to me, has the potential to be even more nefarious. Listen, bad things happen on movie and TV sets. We've seen documentaries about that. But there's a lot of controls in place. There are tutors. There are laws that are followed. There are rules and regulations. When you're doing stuff at home with kids for YouTube, there's nobody on that set to make sure that the kids get the right breaks, that they get fed, that they have bathroom breaks, that they get to study. It's kind of a gray area, though they're still supposed to follow all those rules. And you just see what these kids, just almost rehearsing all their little spontaneous moments. And some of it's really fun. And then sometimes you just feel like, God, do they have to have every moment of their lives on camera? And does the parent have to control all of it? So it's called Bad Influence, a documentary series on Netflix, a must see. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. And we will talk again quite soon.